Hey, how's it going everyone, and welcome back to another video. Getting your PSP connected in 2025 may sound like a fruitless endeavor. Websites are broken, online services are down, and you're like, hey, that was kind of pointless. But you'll be surprised to know there's actually quite a lot you can still do, all thanks to the various communities that are keeping it alive. And the best part is, as of February 2025, getting your PSP connected to Wi-Fi has become a whole lot easier. All thanks to a user by the name of Moment that one day decided to drop by the PSP Homebrew Discord server and casually drop one of the most groundbreaking plugins released to date. Something that was speculated to be possible on paper, yet was never actually implemented for the past 20 years. And that would be support for WPA2 Wi-Fi, essentially allowing the PSP to finally connect to most modern Wi-Fi routers. So there has definitely never been a better time to actually get your PSP connected online and get a small taste of what it's like to be online in 2006. So with that being said, I'm going to show you how to set up a Wi-Fi, how to get your PSP connected, and showcase all the various things that you can still do in 2025. So without further ado, let's get right into it. Alright, so first things first, I want to mention that this plugin is still in development, meaning that you may run into issues that I may not, and that may be fixed sometime in the future with a future update. That being said, if a future update does happen, I'll make sure to update you guys in the pinned comment below, as well as in the spreadsheet. This will be the primary spreadsheet that I'll be updating as time goes on with anything related to getting online on the PSP. And again, make sure you go ahead and check out the pinned comment for any future developments, updates, or corrections. And please don't go out DMing the developer, as there's already enough people messaging him. So with that being said, here's what a typical experience looks like. You head on over to your PSP, and you either launch a game, or jump into the internet browser, or you might dabble into the network settings under the settings section. And then you go infrastructure mode, new connection, and then you go scan. And you might see something like this, telling you that there are no Wi-Fi connections available. So you might do another scan again, and you might finally see your network show up, but it's grayed out and not supported. So what do? Well, you go out on the internet, you search up some information, and you realize that the PSP is too old and you can't really connect to modern Wi-Fi. And what most people tell you, including me in the previous videos, is to simply open a Wi-Fi hotspot without a password on your phone. And it's without a password because modern phones and devices nowadays don't really offer the old Wi-Fi security protocol, so it's either no password or too much security for the PSP to handle. Well, that will be until now. So we'll go ahead and exit. And since I'm running ARC4 custom firmware, which is currently the latest custom firmware for the PSP that is still maintained in 2025, we can jump into the custom firmware settings and enable it right over here. I'm currently running R163. As of right now, this is the latest version, and we can pretty much go ahead and restart the device once we enable the option. Now you're probably like, wait, I thought it was a plugin. And you were right. When it was first released, it was a plugin. But with the permission of Moment, the developer of the WPA2 Wi-Fi plugin, the ARC4 developers were able to implement it right into the custom firmware, which is very nice. However, if you're running old custom firmware, such as 6.61, Pro C, Pro LME, or Infinity, I won't be going into too much detail on how to do it, but you basically put the PRX plugin file into your SE plugins folder and add the following line to both the vsh.txt and game.txt. If you're running old custom firmware, I highly recommend you go ahead and upgrade to ARC4. So once you finally have all that set up, we can head back to the network settings and try our luck again. And there we go. As you can see, our network is finally showing up, except it's showing up as a WPA network and not a WPA2. And that's currently because the plugin is actually taking over the original protocols and doing some hackery to make it work. So once you have the WPA2 plugin running, old WEP and WPA networks will no longer work until you go ahead and disable the plugin. Now you're probably asking, why do I want to go back to old networks? Well, that's because some multiplayer games only work, as of right now, on the old Wi-Fi protocols. And from my understanding, that's because the plugin right now, it still needs some tweaking. And I believe the developer hinted that it is possible to actually include some more compatibility, so we'll see. Again, if there's any updates, you'll find it in the pinned comment, as well as a spreadsheet. For now, don't worry about it, let's continue on. So go ahead and select your network, right D-pad again, and right here you can go ahead and type out your password. Since I changed the password to something extremely secure, just for the sake of this video, and if you fancy, you can go ahead and scroll through the different keyboards, including the standard QWERTY one. But in my opinion, the standard combo one, it reigns supreme. Hit start, and then move over to the next screen. Right D-pad again, right D-pad one last time, and hit X to save your settings. Now it's going to say save complete, and you can go ahead and test out your connection. Now if you're finding yourself stuck in a loop like this, what that most likely means is that you typed out the password wrong. So let's go ahead and fix that. And once you're here, all you have to do is hit triangle on the network and hit edit. Right D-pad, and then you can go ahead and retype your password. Of course, once you're done typing it out, jump all the way to the end, hit save again, and test your connection once again. And once you see obtaining IP address, that's a pretty good sign. It'll take a little moment to test the internet connection, and there you go. Now we can head back over, and just like that, we now have our PSP connected. So whenever you launch a game, or jump into the web browser, it will automatically connect to that network without having to do the whole setup. However, That is, of course, if your network is already pre-configured to work with the PSP. So how do you get it to work? Well, let me go ahead and show you what you need to do in order to get your Wi-Fi network, whether it's at home or at work, to be compatible with your PSP. And yes, I'll be also providing you with alternative methods so you don't have to tamper and mess with your home router if you're not comfortable or don't have the access to it. So here are the base settings that you need configured on your router in order for it to support your PSP. Again, the link for your spreadsheet will be in the description down below, and I'm most likely going to add extra information after I'm done making this video. First off, your Wi-Fi network needs to have the 2.4 GHz band separate from the 5 GHz band. If you don't know, there are some routers that can do what's called band steering or smart connect that combines both 5 GHz and 2.4 GHz bands under the same network. So when you connect, the router will automatically switch you between those two, and it's supposed to be a user-friendly way that would automatically switch between the two networks as needed. Except in the case of the PSP, as of right now, it's not exactly supported, and it's going to cause you some issues. So make sure you have your 2.4 GHz network running standalone. So when you go ahead and search for your Wi-Fi, it should say your network 2.4G and your network 5G, if you have both of those. Next up, your Wi-Fi mode must have 11B. It can be 11B/G/N/AX. You can have multiple letters, and yes, I'm dumbing it down, but what's most important is that you have the letter B in the list. So 11B/G/N/AX would work, as well as 11B/G/N. But, of course, you want the most compatibility to include not only your PSP, but other modern devices, so make sure you have the one that includes some of the modern ones, such as AX. Of course, your Wi-Fi security must be set as WPA2, or even WPA2/WPA3. However, WPA/WPA2 will not work. So make sure you have it as this one, and depending on your router, you may or may not see these extra security settings. Your WPA2 network must be an AES CCMP only. As of right now, AES TKIP will not work. So if you have the option between these two, make sure you select CCMP. If you don't see the option at all, configure all the other settings and try your luck. Now for the next two settings, they are optional, but they're there if you need them. In my testing, 20Hz, 40Hz, and 20/40, or sometimes known as auto, have all worked just fine with the PSP. I've been told by some people that 40Hz doesn't work, but in my testing, I found it to work just fine. So if you do have an issue, I guess you could try 20 MHz. Again, your mileage will vary depending on your router. Finally, we have channel, and this one I would recommend having as auto, unless of course you're running into weird issues where sometimes your network is showing up while others it's not, or you're losing connection constantly. That could possibly mean that your router may be running in a very crowded channel, which happens when you have too many Wi-Fi networks in the same area. So one way you can actually go ahead and check what channel is free is by installing a Wi-Fi analyzer app on your phone. You run it, you take a look at the graphs, and you'll quickly find out which one is free and which one is not. And that's really about it. These are the base configuration requirements in order for a WPA2 network to work on your PSP. If you have those settings, you have a very good chance of your router working. Of course, there's still a chance that your router may not like it, or your router may not even have some of these settings because it's locked up by your ISP. And this is, of course, if you have access to your router, if you own a router, and if you're even comfortable actually changing your router settings. If you're not, don't do it because there are alternative methods that I'm about to show you. But first, let me show you the base configuration that you need for the games that don't support WPA2. Basically, the easiest way to go about it is to have no password. And unfortunately, most of the modern devices, such as your laptop, your phone, they don't really support this option. So what most people do is sometimes they'll get another router, connect it to the main router, and configure this one to do what the PSP needs. Or on Android devices, you can open up a passwordless network, which is fantastic. But if it's an iPhone, well, you're out of luck. Or my favorite way is to use a location-free base station, which is a magnificent device from the past that was way ahead of its time. And if you don't know what these are, well, stay tuned for a future video. By the way, if you're wondering what these are, they are tiny little routers from a company called GL.iNet that I've been buying for the past couple of years. I've been kind of obsessed with them. If you're interested, we'll talk more about it at the end of the video. Or what some people do is run an old router that supports old Wi-Fi protocols, so they can have a password with a grain of rice worth of security. And that's really about it. Again, we're hoping to see an update in the future where we don't have to actually connect to an old Wi-Fi network for some of these multiplayer games. In my case, most of the main popular games don't require it, but you don't have to worry about it for now. Now we get to the part where I show you the easy way of getting a mobile hotspot. That can be done on a Windows machine, Android phones, iPhones, and macOS. Of course, you can also do it on Linux, but I'm not going over it because there are so many different distros, and if you have Linux, well, you should already know how to do it. So when it comes to Windows, here's how you can set it up. Open up the Start menu and type Hotspot, and select Mobile Hotspot. And once you're here, open up Properties, hit Edit, rename it to whatever you need. In my case, I'm calling it PSPNet. Set a secure but an easy password type on the PSP, and for the network band, of course, make sure it's on 2.4 GHz, and hit Save. Then for share over, make sure it's on Wi-Fi, and share internet connection from, you can have it either from Wi-Fi or Ethernet, and then turn it on. And now if we go ahead and check on our PSP, we can see that our Wi-Fi network is now showing up. So we can just simply connect to it, just like we did before, and you'll pretty much be good to go. And in my opinion, this is the easiest option and probably my preferred method for most people. If of course you have a computer that has Wi-Fi. If you don't, however, it's no problem. Basically, in order for this to work, your computer or laptop must be either connected to Ethernet or Wi-Fi, of course, to pull the internet from. As for actually broadcasting the Wi-Fi, your machine will need a Wi-Fi card. Of course, if you're using a laptop, it will already be built in. Some desktop PCs will have it built in as well. And if you don't, well, you can get yourself one of these adapters that can be had for pretty cheap. You can get them for around $10 to $15 and they'll get the job done. They run on a Realtek Wi-Fi chip. And again, once you have it connected, not only will it actually give your computer Wi-Fi, but it will also allow you to broadcast your own Wi-Fi signal as well. So if you're interested, I'll leave links for these in the description down below. And one last thing when it comes to Windows, there is the power saving settings. So if you're looking to run this Wi-Fi network 24/7 without shutting down, as long as your computer is running, of course, you'll need to turn this off. Otherwise, it's going to automatically shut down after 20 minutes of inactivity. Moving on, we have the Android mobile hotspot, and I'm not going to go too much in detail because it's pretty straightforward, same exact setting as before, except depending on what phone you have, you may have more or less settings that you can configure. In my case, with my LG V60, I've got plenty of settings to play around with, and you're most likely not going to have all of them. Wi-Fi name, WPA2 PSK, whatever password, and make sure that it's on 2.4 GHz. In my case, I also have other options such as maximum connections, but you don't have to worry about any of this. Again, my phone can both do WPA2, which the PSP connects to now, thanks to the plugin, or an open network. Either way, both will work. And finally, we have the iPhone personal hotspot and macOS internet sharing features. I don't have any of these devices, so I can't really show you, but you can look them up and figure them out for yourself. And I believe that's really about it when it comes to actually configuring your Wi-Fi. If I have any new discoveries, I'll make sure to include it in the spreadsheet. So with that being said, let's finally move on to doing something actually fun. Starting with dedicated PSP-ready websites, such as Lucid's PSP portal. And this one by far has to be my favorite, absolutely fantastic website that is absolutely packed with content. Of course, Lucid does have his own YouTube channel, so make sure you go and check it out. Then we have the PSP Homebrew Store, pretty self-explanatory, packed with homebrew and some demos. And finally, we have Gorkaika's PKG web installer, as well as the ARC4 web installer. And forgive me if I didn't pronounce it right. The ARC4 web installer is an alternative method. I personally prefer Lucid's portal. I go over how to install ARC custom firmware using Lucid's portal on my ARC4 video. As for the PKGi installer, well, we'll go over this in just a bit, as we do have our own dedicated section. So here's how you go about browsing the internet on your PSP. Open up your internet browser, let it connect to your network, and once it's done connecting, it's usually going to throw you into google.com, which thankfully does still work, but that's really about it. You can browse the search results, browse the images, but that's about all you can really do. Most websites are going to show up as broken, such as Wikipedia, which used to work. However, there is some talk of improving the built-in web browser's capabilities. But of course, we're not here for Google. We're here for the dedicated website, so let's go ahead and jump into my bookmarks and open it from here. And by the way, we'll show you how to actually copy your bookmarks from one PSP to another, so you don't have to retype all of this all over again, or even use my pre-made bookmarks. We'll show you how to do that in just a bit. So browsing on the PSP is pretty cool. You have this little cursor that you can control your analog stick, but the preferred way is to use the D-pad to jump to the various links. Now the custom firmware section we're already taking a look at in the ARC4 video. Basically, it's got the ARC installer, Pro Custom Firmware if you fancy the old stuff, and some extra ancient stuff. There are a few handy plugins right over here, and if you scroll down, there are a couple more. Original firmware, very handy, mostly the official firmwares that you need for both the PSP Go as well as the regular models, including the Corner Switch Downgrader. And by the way, to go back, you can hit left trigger. PSP Dev Homebrew Store, well basically it's a link to that website we just took a look at. So we can jump into ports for example, and once it's done loading on the bottom right side, we can scroll right down here and select whatever we want. And then once that's done loading, again you have to scroll down, I wish it was over here, I don't know why it's not, and click the big fat download button, which will pop up this little screen and tell you if you want to download it, and once it's done, you'll find it on your home screen. And I believe if you have categories light, it might interfere with it, so you might have to actually move around the file using a file browser such as Custom Launcher, as this will be thrown directly into your game folder. So back to Lucid's portal, we have XMB Extras, and this is where you can find the various applications that were available on Sony's servers, but of course, all those have been taken down. The top one that probably everyone wants to get is probably the SenseMe player, so you can find it right here, and you can also find some of the internet radio stuff, but honestly, I've already tested it out, it's not worth your time. And now we get to the fun stuff. So here we have PSP demos. Some people are like, what's the point? But hey, there are people out there who love playing demos, and why not? But yeah, there are tons of different games and other applications that don't look like demos that are included here. So you can go ahead and play with these things, download them, enjoy them, test them out, and get a little throwback. And lastly, we have my favorite one, that is the RSS feed. So basically, these are little channels that Sony used to have, where they drop various pieces of content, from videos, wallpapers, MP3s, very cool stuff. And how you can install them is by simply clicking on them, clicking yes, and then they'll be added. So let's go ahead and head back over here by clicking home, and right under the RSS channel is where you can find all of these channels that you have just set up. We can head over to wallpapers, and here you'll find yourself various different wallpapers that you can go ahead and browse and download on your PSP. For example, we'll pick this one here, and that's pretty cool. Next, next, next. Wallpapers tend to load a whole lot quicker than the other stuff, which if we go ahead and browse to, which I believe this was like a kind of a show or something, so we can go ahead and select one, click download, and it's going to take a while to download, but once it's done, we'll find it in the video section. So we'll just fast forward here. There we go. So now if we go ahead and jump to the video section, we can find it right here, PS Pulse, and once we go ahead and play, we'll have ourselves a little throwback. Very cool stuff in my opinion, and the best part is the PS Pulse stuff is actually in good high quality, so very worthwhile taking a look at. And these are like 6 minutes each. Yeah, it takes a while to download, but still pretty cool nonetheless. And that's pretty much it for the websites. Lucid's website is absolutely awesome. Highly recommend you go ahead and check it out. Tons of cool pieces of content, and I really respect it. And the last thing I can show you here in regards to the built-in web browser is how to copy your bookmarks from one PSP to another. So go ahead and plug in your PSP into your computer, go into your memory card, PSP folder, system, and then web browser. And here you can find the bookmarks.html. You simply copy that, put it onto the other PSP, and you're pretty much good to go. And that's pretty much it for the built-in web browser, at least for the online stuff. In the future, we'll show you how to do some cool offline stuff that they have definitely probably seen before. Anyways, enough talking about the web browsers for now. We'll talk about the Opal browser at the end of the video. So now we can finally go ahead and talk about the online multiplayer aspect, which is probably the biggest reason why you want to go ahead and connect your PSP online. So let's get into it. Alright, so multiplayer games. How good are they? Are they worth your time? And most importantly, what games can you actually play? Well, surprisingly, there's a whole lot. And thankfully, there's a spreadsheet that is made by the user Dragon81. They've got a YouTube channel with tons of high quality multiplayer videos, so if you're interested to see what it looks like on multiple different games, well, you can go ahead and check them out. I'll leave a link for it in the description down below. So as of right now, the PSP Games with Online Multiplayer 2025 spreadsheet is the most up-to-date spreadsheet that you can get. That goes over all the different games that you can still play, their region, if they're cross-region or not, the maximum amount of players you can have in a lobby, and of course, some extra comments and notes on how they work. Now you'll notice that they're actually divided in different sections, and each of these will have a name. So for example, it says PS.org, and if we go to the next sheet here, we can find it right over here. We'll find the primary DNS, the secondary DNS, and a Discord server, sometimes even a website, where you can go ahead and join up the Discord server to meet up with other users, and you'll notice all the other ones lined up right beside it, which is very handy, as if you want to play these games, you're going to definitely need to join a Discord server and find out who's online to play with, and if you need any help troubleshooting the game, well, these various communities got you covered, which is fantastic. For example, if you go ahead and visit one of the websites, such as the PS3 one, you'll find out that it's not only for the PSP, but for other consoles as well, in this case, the PS2 and the PS3. You can see how many players are online, in which game, which region, and it's pretty awesome. And you can also see the whole list of supported games. Again, this is just one website out of all the other ones here. Now surprisingly, there are still some official Sony servers that are still active that you can still join up with your PSP on and actually play online, that you can check out right on top of the spreadsheet. Thankfully, you don't have to do anything special. You can simply connect your PSP to Wi-Fi and join up in the game. That being said, each of these community servers will require you to do some kind of setup. Some of them will only require a DNS setup, which is very easy to do, and I'll show you how to do it. While others, some such as SOCOM, will require you to have a plugin, and others like Outrun 2006 will require you to do some port forwarding, which is a bit more involved, kind of annoying to do, but if you really want to play this game, that's one way to do it. I've played Wipeout on the Anti-Gravity Racing Foundation, or AGRF. It works flawlessly, the game runs like a dream, buttery smooth, and a whole lot of fun if you can master the controls, of course. Which obviously, as you can see with the gameplay, I have not. I haven't touched that game in years. I also managed to join a full lobby of Medal of Honor, and it was actually a blast to play. The game looked beautiful, and despite the annoying controls, having to use the face buttons instead of another joystick, it was kinda annoying, not to mention the fact that I was playing behind a camera. It was still a blast to play. There's a whole lobby, and once you get the hang of it, it becomes pretty fun. 2 quick tips I can give you for this game: use double tap to move faster left or right, and set your sensitivity all the way to max. And finally, I played some good old MotorStorm Arctic Edge. Now this one was a bit too laggy. I believe it was running around 20 FPS, and there were players who are used to that. We had a whole discussion, and some other players are playing on 60 FPS on their computer and having a blast. But of course, there are people who are pros who can actually play directly on the PSP hardware and play a whole lot better than others. Another game I managed to play last night, right before wrapping this video up, was SOCOM, and I was lucky to join a full lobby. The control scheme is a bit different from other games because the PSP doesn't have dual analog sticks, but once you get the hang of it, it's pretty straightforward. A lot of the players out there, like with the other games we played, are playing on the PPSSPP emulator. They do have a slight advantage, but nonetheless, I was able to play with them, and it was pretty fun joining voice chat on Discord and communicating with the team. One thing I should mention, get some good practice in before you join the multiplayer. I had zero practice. I had never played this game before until now. And let's just say everyone was throwing grenades around and getting spawn kills. So get some practice in and get used to it. Other than that, pretty great experience. By far one of the most technically advanced games on the PSP. I mean, it even has built-in voice chat and text chat. And that's pretty insane from a handheld system from 2004. One last thing they should know about this game is that it does require a plugin, so make sure you go ahead and install it. Again, you'll find more information when you join the respective server for that SOCOM game. Now you're probably asking, what do I do with these numbers and how do I set them up? Well, let me show you. First off, decide which game you want to play, join the Discord server, figure out what you need, and if all you need is a DNS setup, then that is one thing I can quickly show you here. So once you find the server you want to connect to, head on over to your PSP's network settings, infrastructure mode, go to new connection, of course scan your network, select your network, next, next, and when it comes to address settings, set it to custom. For IP address, you can keep it as automatic, and when it comes to DNS settings, you can jump down to manual. Now hit X, and adjust the numbers according to what you see on screen. For example, if you want to connect to PS3 Reborn, then we can type these numbers right over here. Once you're done with the first row, hit X, scroll down, and hit X again. And that's it. Hit next, 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 and then you can go ahead and save. That is, if all you care about is a single server. Of course, if you're like me and you want to try out the other servers, then you want to go back here and change your connection name to something like an abbreviation of your main network, and then whatever it is, followed by a dash, and then the name of the actual server. And once you're done, you can go ahead and hit save. Now as you can see, we're renaming it because there's quite a lot of servers, and a lot of them require their own setup. So the best way to go about it, in my opinion, is to give each one of them their own connection profile with a nickname of your network, followed by the server name. That way, you can keep everything nice and organized and know where you need to connect next time you want to play one of your games. Again, I'll leave the spreadsheet in the description down below, and if you don't know where to start, you can also join the PSP Online Discord server, where it's going to have online gaming events that are linked to the other servers that are dedicated for those specific games. For example, we got the Portable Rush, and if you go in and click here, it is going to send us to the Anti-Gravity Racing Foundation Discord server, where you can go in and join up the next event and play with everyone who's online. And again, if you need any help, make sure you go ahead and join those respective servers and ask them there. And the users over there are obviously going to have more experience than I, so if there's anything specific that you're having issues with, make sure you join the respective servers and ask there. And one last thing I should mention is that some games will require ad hoc party, which is going to require you to connect your PlayStation 3 with your PSP in order to join and play on those servers. And speaking of lobby, some of these games are going to require you to log in into your PSN account. And no, don't worry, you will not get banned, and you can safely log in with your main account. If you're really worried, you can go ahead and make another account and log in on that one just for your PSP. However, for those like me who doesn't use any other PlayStation hardware, logging in might be pretty confusing because you go in and log in on your PSP and it'll tell you that your password is wrong. Which you're like, I've already reset it, I'm pretty sure it's the right password, and it doesn't work. So, what do you do about it? Well, there's an entire process, and I've written a whole guide right here with pictures to show you how to go about it, and once you get the hang of it, it's pretty straightforward. So, you first log in into your PSN account, you go into your account settings, go to security, then you want to click on generate or manage device setup passwords, click generate new password, and then there you go. You'll have yourself a little password right here to log in into your PSP. So you go ahead and put that in, you put your email, you put that password you just generated, you hit sign in. Of course, if this is going to be a secondhand PSP that has been logged in before, you will get this little error telling you that you cannot log in with someone else's ID. And you probably found that out because their old email would show up. It's pretty simple. All you have to do is to go to settings, system settings, and restore default settings. And don't worry, this will not reset your PSP back to official firmware. Everything will stay as is, and only a few things will be reset, such as time, your PSP's name, and possibly the Wi-Fi configuration. So let me show you what that looks like. So if you go to the PlayStation Network, it will say account management. That means it's already been logged into. So once you go ahead and connect to your network, it'll say signing in, and then it's going to tell you the password is wrong. So you click OK, and you find someone else's account. So to remove it, you go all the way here to system settings, and scroll all the way down to restore default settings. And this will reset the following things. It's all basic stuff that you can easily restore or reconfigure, so it's not a big deal. But the most important one is your PlayStation Network account. You want to take that off so you can do your own stuff. So click enter, click OK, and you're pretty much done. So it's going to restart, and once it's done restarting, select your language, your time zone, your time and date, device nickname, and click OK. And now we go ahead and check again. It will say sign up for PlayStation Network. So go ahead and set up your Wi-Fi once again, as now it's been fully reset. And once you're connected, you'll get a little hopeful screen right here that makes it feel like the PlayStation Store is still working when it's really not. So you can either create a new user, but it'll be just faster to do it on your phone or computer. But once you have that done, select existing account and put in your email, and again, that new password you generated with the guide that we just talked about. And that's it. Pretty straightforward, just follow the guide and you'll be good to go. Now if you're wondering what you could do with the PlayStation Store once you're logged in, well, not a whole lot. As you can see, there is nothing displayed on the actual homepage, but if you go upwards and jump into the View Downloads button, depending if you purchased any PSP games in the past, well, you can actually go ahead and download them through the official way. That being said, I really got nothing that I could download, but from what I heard, if you got a big game library from various different PlayStation consoles, then you're going to be spending some time scrolling through the list. These ones are most likely from my PS Vita. Other than that, you can jump into Camera Information, Avatar, and browse some of the modern avatars from the modern systems. So that's kind of cool. And lastly, if you ever need to activate your system, in those rare case scenarios, you can go all the way down here and activate it by selecting Game and Activate System. It'll tell you that it's linked to a previous account and that the games from the previous account will no longer run on this system, and you can just tell it yes and be good to go. Now let's say you got multiple PSPs, and you really don't want to go through the whole entire process of having to set up each network individually. So here's what you could do about it. And a quick shout out to Craziness. When asked if this was possible, he pointed me in the right direction. So a big thanks to him for this one. So let's say you have finally logged in into your PSN account and configured all the servers that you need. So to copy your PSP's profile, here's what you could do. With ARC4, you can simply hit select, open up the VSH menu, go to advanced, and under USB device, select Flash 1. And if it's the PSP you're copying from, that's all you need to do. So go ahead and exit the menu and plug in your PSP. Now even though we have mounted Flash 1, which is one of the PSP's hidden storage banks that houses your important information, it will actually not show up unless you have a memory card installed, even though we're not really mounting the memory card. So if you get the no memory card error and nothing is showing up, plug in any old memory card and try again. And as you can see, we've got ourselves a 5 MB storage device. Inside, you'll find this registry folder, which houses the system.drag and system.ireg. So what you want to do is to go ahead and copy this folder, and make sure that you don't share it with anyone else. So now you can go ahead and set aside the PSP you have copied from, and pick up any other PSP that you want to copy this profile to. For example, we got this green PSP, and it's still linked to someone else's account. Once we do copy this profile, this can take the place of restoring the system back to default settings to remove this account. Again, if you're logging into the same account, no need to do system restore. So as you can see, we got someone else's account and a different set of Wi-Fi profiles. So once you're ready, go ahead and hit select, open up the VSH menu, change your USB device to Flash 1, and this time you want to enable USB read-only to disable. That way we can actually make changes instead of only being able to copy or read. And at this point I should tell you, make sure you don't touch anything else, because if you do, you could easily brick your console, and that's going to be a whole other story. So if you don't feel comfortable doing this, don't do it. But all it is, we're copying 2 files from one PSP to another. If you're just doing that, you should be perfectly fine. So once you have USB device mounted to Flash 1, and USB read-only is set to disable, we can go ahead and plug in our USB. And now we can simply just drag and drop the registry folder and replace whatever is there. If you want, you can of course make a backup of your registry. And that's it. Now if we go ahead and check our network settings, we can see that we have our profiles exactly how we had them on the other PSP. Not only that, but if we go ahead and restart our PSP, we'll notice that our account has also been transferred over. Just know that the password you have generated will not work on this unit, and you have to generate a new password for this specific unit. From what I noticed, those passwords that you generate, they work per device. So it's up to you if you want to save it or not. You can always revoke it and create a new one. It's really up to you. But essentially, once you do the step or log into another PSP, you'll need to generate a unique password. And that's all there is to it. Just saved you a ton of time if you got multiple PSPs. And finally, for the biggest useful thing you could do on a PSP online, it's called the PKGI. So let's go ahead and launch it and show you what it's all about. First things first, it's going to ask you to connect to your network. So go ahead and do that. And once you're in, you're going to notice a whole lot going on. And yes, it is exactly what you think it is. So basically, you can browse through the list here, from left to right, also up and down, with both your D-pad or analog. And once you find something interesting, you can go ahead and hit X, and it's going to start downloading directly into your PSP. Now, of course, if you have the Categories Light plugin, you're going to have to manually move the folder into one of your custom folders that are inside the game section. Now, right now we're downloading a pretty small game, so if you're going to be downloading something big, you're going to be here for a while, so make sure it's plugged in. And once it's done downloading, it's going to start installing or unpacking, and then you'll be greeted with a successful screen. And once that's done, you can go ahead and exit out. There it is. So, how do you actually get this working? Well, it's 2 parts, and I'm not going to go too much into detail. There are plenty of videos on how to install it if you want someone to hold your hands for it. That being said, it's made of 2 parts. One part, of course, is a homebrew app. The other part is 3 different plugins, and you may or may not need them, depending on what you're downloading. So if you're interested, here's a source link right here, and ready pre-configured downloads that you can get from these 2 links, which I may or may not remove sometime in the future. Again, there are tons of videos about this. If you're interested, you can just look it up on YouTube. Just search PKGI PSP, and you'll find out what you need to do. Now, another very useful thing that you can do online, and one that I highly recommend you do, especially if you're going to be playing some online games, as it might help with some connection or timeout issues, and that is to set your time correctly, or even better, to sync it with the online servers. And to do that, you want to jump into date and time settings, date and time, and set via internet. select your network, and there you go. Your PSP is now perfectly synced with the world time. In my case, I was running into some weird timeout issues when I was trying to play some SOCOM, and I thought it was my PSP or my network, but it might not fix it. It's something that is very easy to do and highly recommend it. And one last useful thing that I can show you here would have to be the FTP manager. If for whatever reason you don't have your USB cable or a card reader and you're running ARC4, you can go in and open up your custom launcher, head on over to network, and start the FTP server. And make sure that both your PSP, laptop, or phone are both connected to the same network. And once your PSP's FTP server is running, you'll have an IP right at the top, which with an FTP app, one I recommend for Windows users is WinSCP. Once you have it opened up, set the protocol to FTP, type the IP address you have on your PSP into the hostname. So in my case, it's 192.168.8.105. And set anonymous login, and hit save. Name it to wherever you want, my PSP, hit OK, and then once you log in, you'll notice that your PSP has started logging what's going on, and that you have your memory stick shown up on your laptop wirelessly. So now you can go ahead and transfer files between your PSP and your computer pretty easily. Now this is useful if you're just transferring a couple small files, not a big deal. They're not going to take too much time. Of course, if you're doing bulky, heavy files, save yourself the hassle and get yourself a good card reader. Other than that, you can actually connect your PSP to another FTP server, such as possibly another PSP. Of course, not as useful, and it's a bit of a hassle to get set up, but it's pretty straightforward. Basically, one PSP has a server, and on the other PSP, you can go ahead and open up the file manager, hit left trigger, and jump all the way down to FTP. Then you're going to type your IP address on the other PSP, that is the server, and that's it. You'll be able to transfer files between the two. And yeah, it's cool, and the use case is very small, so that's why I'm not going to go too much into detail. And that's really about it for the useful things that you can do online with your PSP. Now I'm saying useful things because that question goes on a lot. Why would you connect your PSP online? What's the point? Well, hopefully we have answered that. And for those who are going to mention that I missed the internet radio, well, I didn't cover it because it's just way too slow and not really worth your time. And likewise with the Opera Mini browser, it's basically a Java web browser that runs off an emulator. Pretty cool to see, but this is of course a web browser that was meant for like your BlackBerry or Nokias. Yes, you can use it to browse your Reddit, but it doesn't have a cursor like it does on the original browser with your analog stick, and the navigation is a bit iffy. It's mostly used for emulating some Java games, so long story short, I'm just here to tell you that it exists, but it's not worth your time. And that is all for this video. The spreadsheet will be updated as time goes on, likewise with the post notes in the pinned comment. If there are any frequently asked questions, I'll make sure to update it, and if there are any future developments, I'll make sure to let you know. That being said, the fastest and simplest way, if you don't want to mess with your router, is to simply use your laptop to set up your own Wi-Fi network. And if you got a desktop with no Wi-Fi, then get yourself one of these things. I'll leave links for them in the description down below. And if you're wondering why these routers, these are my portable travel routers that I've been buying for the past couple of years. Kind of been obsessed with them if you can't tell, but they're definitely very handy to have around. And one way I usually use them is when I go to a hotel, I have them connected to the Wi-Fi or the internet as provided. Since I have the router pre-configured with a VPN, I can broadcast a nice safe signal to whoever is with me. And if I really wanted, I can set up a little media server directly on these routers, using either the micro SD card or the USB ports on the back. Again, very handy routers. If you're an IT person, you'd definitely love these things, as they definitely help troubleshoot these videos much quicker than having to mess with my main routers. So if you're interested, I'll make sure to leave links for them in the description down below. And that is pretty much it for this video. Bit of a different one from the usual. Been wanting to make it for a while, but the whole process of getting connected was pretty annoying. But thankfully, once this WPA2 plugin came out, it made life a whole lot easier. Anyways, stay tuned for the next video. We got ourselves a Project Smokey / channel update that we need to go through. It's now been exactly 1 year, and I think it's the perfect time to go over all the things we're going to be doing in the upcoming videos for this year. Anyways, this video is long enough. Thank you for watching. Hope you have enjoyed it and learned something new. If you did, hit the like button and subscribe for content like this, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care, everyone.